all day, on all my days, the lives I'm not to process wash in, anxieties lullaby on, and quite like to be gotten among. But now, and now, one old abundant flower just screws up the room. Time I'm Not Here by Graham Faust. You did say that we have a lot to talk about for this tiny poem.
Well, it's a tiny poem, but it perplexes me a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good.
Um,
It
to
perplexed me a lot too.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The first, well, I don't know. If I think about the whole poem, I picture like a kind of like a grumbly little man. I don't know, because of those first two stanzas. All day on all my days. I had to think about that for a second. All day on all
All
my
my days.
days. The lives I'm not to process watch in. The anxieties lullaby on. And then the old abundant flower just screws up the room. And that language is so different from the rest, or it feels a little bit like a splash of color or a slap in the face.
Right, slap in the face.
Which is funny that it's about a flower
right.
that screws everything up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, I also found it really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's like he's complaining about the flower.
Like I just want to live. I just want to live in peace with
Right.
my
With my anxiety.
right, my negativity.
Why are you bothering me, flower? And it's not just a flower.
Mm-hmm.
It's an abundant flower.
Mm-hmm.
And that adds even more.
Right, and an old one.
An old one.
Right.
So
It's
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 like,
defiant.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
defiant. It makes me feel like, oh, this flower is so beautiful. It's just, I can't deal with that much beauty. Why?
Oh, this is silly, but I had the experience more recently, maybe where I was talking to an old professor of mine about what it was like to teach during COVID, and I was being grumpy about the whole thing, even though I'm not the one who's a student right now.
Right.
But I was sort of wanting her. I was just to be negative about it. I just wanted to be like, it was awful, right? Like you got nothing out of it, right? Like it was just paled in comparison. And she's much older, this very statuesque, kind of quiet, wise woman said, no, actually, like, I got a lot out of it. Actually, this was so cool. This new way of learning was so innovative. And she had all these great things to say. To me, she is the old, abundant flower, meaning she's not just some, kind of bright eyed, young thing who's eager about everything, but rather that she was a person who's smarter than me and older than me and wiser than me, more abundant than me, clearly, more generous than me in her assessment of things. And that felt a little bit like a slap in the face, like a slap on the wrist, maybe
Right.
more.
Oh, I was wondering because among my perplexities, I was wondering where does the word old fit in, or how does it fit in
Mm-hmm.
into my understanding of the flower being this beautiful, positive thing that he can deal with. And now that you told me about your professor being like an old abundant, now it clicks. Like an old abundant flower. So it's not only is it abundant, the flower being old means it has some understanding of reality.
Right.
Like it has seen the real world. It's
Yeah.
not just like I'm a beautiful new bud right from the tree.
Right. Right.
I have seen the world. I have been here for a while. I know I'm dying.
Right.
I'm old. I'm dying, but
There's a resilience about it.
right,
That it's old and abundant is much more humbling.
right. And he's like, and then it screws up the room. Like, why? Why?
What do you think about the line, all day and all my days, the lives I am not to process, wash in?
Yeah, that word process made me think a lot. Because when I think about this feeling, the lives I'm not to process, wash in, it immediately makes me think of the feeling that I have sometimes that when I see people just walking past me, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, there are so many people who live so many different kinds of lives. And they all know something about life and about the world. And I'm never going to know what they know. I'm never going to feel what they feel. All of that knowledge, cumulative knowledge of their lives, it's just theirs. I'm never going to have that. And then multiply that with like 8 billion people on the planet. So there's so much I won't know. And so I'm not, when I think about the word process, that's what it reminds me. Like, I want to know these things, these people, these lives. That makes me anxious, that I know so little, makes me feel so small. And that's what it reminds me. And then, and again, it reminds me of like people that I don't really understand, maybe politically or ethically, people who do things different in your belief, different things. And I'm like, what is wrong with these people? Why are they like this? Why don't they just get it? Or why don't they get me? And I don't get where they're coming from. And these people, I also can't process that. So there are these two different things. Like, I don't know what people don't know, what other people don't know. And I don't understand a lot of these people who have different ideas. So what I don't know, and what I know but I don't understand, or I can't really deal with. So these are the things that are making him anxious, and it made me anxious too, so I could relate to that part.
Right. I like...
What did you make of it?
Yeah. The way it says not to process, like I am not to process this, as opposed to I don't get to process it, or I will not process it, but rather I'm not to process. I'm kind of like saying you are not to do this. You are not allowed to do this. You're not permitted to do this. Something a little spicy about that to me. Like, almost like it's
forbidden,
or if I were you in that position of feeling like there's so many things that I won't ever know, it would frustrate me to think about the knowledge maybe that I'm not supposed to know them, that there's somebody up there saying it's not just that you won't, it's that you're not meant to. You have to swallow that pill, that you're simply not meant to know what everyone else knows. You're not meant to live as everyone else does, or with the same knowledge or experience that everyone else does. And that certainly feels anxious especially when I am not feeling good about myself, or I'm not feeling good about the knowledge that I carry, but I'm wishing I could live the life that someone else is living. It's frustrating to remember that I'm not to process everything else. I'm stuck with me.
Yeah. And then the anxieties lullaby on. So it's like there is this soft lullaby. The anxieties, this is what the anxieties remind me, is like the anxieties have an undertone. They're not loud. They're soft. They're probably underneath everything. Lullaby on. They're just ongoing. They don't stop. They're ongoing, and they're going on softly. And quite like to be gotten among. What do you make of that? Gotten among.
And
it perplexed me.
I hear that too. I like to get among them. Like that there's something a little bit more sinister about saying the anxiety's lullaby on, because you think of lullaby as being a good thing, or a soothing thing. And I think we've all been soothed by our anxieties from time to time, like that's kind of the power of them, is that you're not always, if you're feeling anxious, you're not, like, if you're having those thoughts that are anxious thoughts, you're not thinking, oh, this is bad, like those feel intrusive, or those feel like they're separate from me. Oftentimes we kind of treasure our anxieties, or we really buy into them and really listen to them. I have that
feeling a lot when reading this poem. Yeah.
It's like anxiety is the old comfort. It's the old way. It's the safe way. It's the it's it's the lullaby. And they quite like to be gotten among, meaning they really like to have you there. They really like to keep you exactly where you are in your comfort zone, being lulled to sleep every night by the sound of your own anxieties, that have the audacity to come in softly and sweetly as though you should want them there,
Right.
as though they are good for you.
What I think of when I hear the word gotten among, it's like accompaniment, because we got to get among, accompanying him through everything, and so it's like the anxiety's lullaby on, and it's the exact same thing that you said. They're always there among all his affairs. So it's like they have made their place.
Exactly.
They have made their place, and it gets among, like it has its own place, and it's like a chummy friendly with all his activities and daily routine in his life.
It's settled into all the corners of the. For some reason, I picture this like grumpy old person in a tiny room, sort of with his entire life inside of it, you know. And the anxieties have gotten among everything. They've gotten in the corners and under the bed and in the dust on the shelf, and they're just very happy to be there.
They're very happy to be there. And I like how he says, and quite like to be gotten. The anxieties like to be gotten among.
Right.
Like, he has nothing to do with it. But the anxiety is running the situation.
Which feels pretty accurate. And back to that first line, it's all day on all my days.
Yeah.
And the lives wash in, the anxieties lullaby on. It's interesting to me, all that language, especially even just the flow of the language in the first line. All day on all my days is very flowy, and it feels a little bit, it doesn't feel sharp. It doesn't feel like it's got sharp corners. It just feels lulling.
Makes me feel like a river that has probably made its path, a stream that has made its path smooth by now. That's how it flows. It's like the order of things. We have settled into a routine, and that's how smoothly the routine runs. Is exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, routine for sure. And then you get, but now, parenthetical,
it's sharp.
And now.
Yeah. And the italicized and really gets me. What do you make of it?
The one version of the story is all day on all my days, the lives wash in, the anxieties lullaby on, but now one old abundant flower just screws up the room. Right. Kind of like, this is the scene, this is the scene as it is, but alas, a change. Or, it presents the thing about the flower as a contrast. Right. Whereas,
and then
he corrects himself to say, and now, it's different to say,
it's like a continuation.
It's and also this, rather that like, it's not that the anxieties in the flower are meant to live separately, as though they're two separate lives.
Right.
One that is, you're lulled to sleep by your anxiety, and then one where you see the beauty of a flower, but rather that it's the same story.
It's the same story.
They are absolutely together.
Right.
You need, it's a way to live with contradiction, I guess, or a way to rope it all in together, that you will be anxious and you will appreciate the flower. That you can't just live one kind of life. You can't just live, I don't know, a happy one or a sad one or an anxious one or an abundant one. You get it all.
What I thought about in that portion, which I really, really enjoy, when he says, quite like to be gotten among, it's all smooth language, as you just said. And then, but now, it's kind of sharp. It's a sharp turn. And the word but itself is a contrast, and it signals a change. And then again, from but now, there's a sharp turn again. It's like, because they're these hyphenated. It's like sharp turn again, and an italicized and, so it's like a very emphasis. Like, no. But now, no. And now. Why? Because it is a change, but he is so adroit with his anxiety that he's able to change that change into the continuation of the anxiety.
Oh, that's
And
very
now
funny.
one old abundant flower just screws up the room because that and now part really goes with the feeling of his anger toward the flower.
Right. And also this.
Right.
Not, but this on the other side. Right. No. And if you can believe it.
Right.
One old abundant flower.
He probably started like, but now one flower is like, no, wait. And now this flower, but now the flower is beautiful. No, and now the flower is, it's just messing up my daily anxiety routine.
Right. Do you feel like this poem ends on I don't know. What note do you feel like it ends on with that final color?
I think it makes fun of the poet himself. It's like, so I think I'm so good at being anxious. Look at me being anxious about an abundant flower, an old abundant flower. And he's so good at being anxious that he can turn the flower into a...
He knows exactly how to spin that one.
Right.
That's funny. Oh, and what do you think about the title? Time I'm Not Here.
Yeah. I think I'm not yet sure how I feel about it. I feel like he's probably making fun of himself for being anxious and then being anxious about being anxious. So yeah, all day on all my days, the lives I'm not to live, wash in, he's anxious. Anxieties, lullaby on, quite like to be gotten among. Anxious again, okay. And now the flower messes things up. Now I'm anxious that the flower is not making me anxious. He's making fun of himself. And within all of that, now that he says, this is about the time I'm not here. I don't know. I don't know exactly how that fits in. What do you think?
That's tough, honestly, but maybe one way I could think about it would be he could be describing a snapshot of his life in the times when he feels overcome by anxiety. That in those moments, those days, weeks, months, years, whatever, this is the experience he has all day on all those days, all my days during that time. This is what I think about, and even the flower. And so that is a description of the time when he's not there. It's maybe a little more optimistic of a take to say that he would say, time I'm not here, almost like he's not present or he's not here when he's having this experience of the world that he describes in this poem.
Right. It has just made me feel like here reminds me of being present, just as you said. And it's like he's in his head so much. He can't see the flower. He can't enjoy it. And that's he's describing the feeling he has when he can't enjoy the flower, when he can't be present.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we figured out the puzzle of the title.
It's like a spicy little snapshot, this poem, which I like about it. That it doesn't, I don't know, that it doesn't let itself just be one thing. It has a lot of different colors, a lot of turns, and you can view it in a positive light or a negative light or a humorous light, and it gives that to you. Maybe if there's this one poem, Stephen Dunn has a poem, much more contemporary poem called Poem for People Who Don't Enjoy Poetry or something like that. But he says,
Graham Foust is also a contemporary.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Great. Then, what does Stephen Dunn say? It's something like, no matter any of this stuff, this poem, or he says, when you need someone to tell you I'll be here when you want me. This poem is saying that to you now. Or this poem will be there for you like a sound inside a shell. Something to that effect. It's a very witty poem, but it has these moments that are really soothing, basically saying, I see you in the times when you're not here. And this poem will be there for you in its humor and with the levity, but also it will bring the circle round to the, like I won't try to deny or disparage the dark experience you may be having. And this poem feels a bit like that too, that it's a little quirky, it's a little sassy. It also doesn't try to write over the anxious feeling of being lullabied by your anxieties all day on all my days, it feels like. But it'll poke you with a little bit of humor, and it's kind of charming that way.
Go ahead and do your version.
Time I'm Not Here by Foust. All day on all my days, the lives I am not to process wash in. Anxieties lullaby on, and quite like to be gotten among. But now, one old abundant flower just screws up the room.